Howdy folks, Little John. In the brewery for latest version of the Whisky Jar. Quickly on the back of the last little video where I put together pretty much all the stock I had of bourbon, corn whiskey, whatever you want to call it, put it all together, batched it up, and I said during that there was a couple of different variations of and takes on UJSSM and different corn mashes and things as part of that. And I said during that I was looking to do a newer method, a bit of a mix of a couple of things going forward, and I want to play with it. I think it's going to work really well, and that's what today is about. So before I get into that, pour myself a beer and give a shout out to Little John's patrons. Guys, thank you for your support. Keeps me going. If you're interested in Patreon, knowing what it's about, the link's down there in the description. Have a look, jump on, have a look. Might be for you. Prizes and giveaways, extras for the patrons that aren't on the channel, extra videos, recipes, things like that. So it might just be right up your alley. But if it's not, and you're here anyway, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. All these things help keep the channel going. So as I said, what I've been doing and playing with the bourbon mashes and the corn mashes is playing around with combinations of cracked corn and flake corn, and different, barley and rye mash, and trying to find a way of making a good product, fairly easy, and certainly without the mucking around and the messing and the crap that is corn, like doing a proper corn mash. Now, it's hard to deny that corn mash gives you a far superior product, but that being said, I've made some really nice bourbon. I'm going to call it bourbon, I don't care. I've made some nice stuff of my own using Uncle Jesse's simple sour mash just with corn and sugar. With using flake corn, and mashing with that, and barley and rye, and combinations of that. So what I wanted to do was, like, I was playing around with the stuff, and it sort of kicked me that I'd stepped away from the cracked corn and was trying to go with the flake corn, and even that presents issues with mashing, especially when you're using it in such high proportions. So it sort of hit me that Uncle Jesse's is simple because it gives you that corn, so it gives you the corn flavour without doing the full mash. It's obviously not quite as strong, but it still gives you that corny flavour, but it's just lacking in that little bit extra that really gets you in that bourbon territory, and that's the barley and the rye that brings in the spiciness and that little bit of extra, the extra depth, and that's really what I think Uncle Jesse's is missing. So what I wanted to do was combine the two, and that's what I've done. So I've not done a full video on this simply because I've not been real well, and I wanted to get this on and started, but I didn't really want to sit down and do a full video. And it was late yesterday afternoon when I done it. But what I want to do is I've taken some pictures, and I'm going to use some old footage and referring back to old videos for you to get through the process of what I've done. And what I'll do is I think I'm going to do follow-up videos. So I've started with the basic Uncle Jesse's simple sour mash with the recipe, 4.2 kilos of cracked corn. And that's gone into the fermenter as it normally would. Now normally you add to that 4 kilos of sugar, or 4.2 kilos of sugar, raw sugar, white sugar, depends on what you want to do. I normally do a combination of the raw and the white. And you mix that all in together and you ferment it out and get your wash and you run that. But what I've done is I've actually taken half of that volume, half of that weight, and used that to mash with. So I've done just a simple brew in a bag mash with 1.2 kilos of ale malt and 800 grams of rye. I've cracked them. I've got a pot of water. It was about around 6 to 7 litres of water. I didn't measure it real accurately. I was just boiling the jug and topping it up until I got to the temperature I wanted. Got it to 70 degrees. Added me brew in a bag into that. Dropped me grain in. Gave it a mix. Put the lid on. Wrapped it up in a couple of towels. And then let it sit for half an hour. Just let it mash away. Exactly the same as I would brew a beer. I took the bag out after that half an hour, gave it a good squeeze, gave it a bit of a rinse through with about 1.5 litres of probably 85, 90 degree water. Same as you would with a beer, with normal beer mash. Just rinsed out sparged out the bag, got all the sugars out of the grape, squeezed the crap out of it, everything out of that, and then boiled that up. Got it up to a boil, boiled it for 5 minutes on the stove, and then cooled it. Got it down to about 70 degrees. And that was just from sitting here on the table in the brewery, just letting it cool down, giving it a bit of a stir here and there, just letting it slowly cool. I did drop 1 bottle of tap water into it, just to get the process started. But while that was cooling, I topped up the fermenter with the corn up to the 13 litre mark with just cold tap water, and gave that a good mix in the corn. Got the corn all nice and wet and soaked up, as you do with an Uncle Jesse's. By that point, the original mash was now was back down to about 70 degrees. I got 1 kilo of white sugar, 1 kilo of raw sugar, poured it into that, dissolved it. So I've used half the sugar you normally would for Uncle Jesse's. So I'm using the sugar and the mash to provide those fermentables to get me the alcohol I need for my spirit. So I'm counting on that and the corn to give me a nice flavour. So as close as I can get to bourbon without having to mash the corn, without having to cook the corn, without having to fight with it for an hour and a half, until your arms are nearly falling off, until shit's burning, if you've got crap all over your saucepans that stock pots that you're fucking going to scrub for hours to get off. None of that nonsense. So I took me pot of water, which was at that point was whatever it was, 7 litres, 8 litres. Poured that into the fermenter and topped it up to 23 litres. At that point, it was somewhere around 30. Sorry, it was somewhere around 30 degrees. I was happy with that. I threw in 20 grams of USW6, bloody basic, American whiskey yeast. and 1 packet of dry enzyme. 3 grams of dry enzyme, just sprinkle them straight on the top, and let it go. Pop the lid on, and it's now going along quite well. As you can see there, it's bubbling away. It's not been 24 hours, it's probably been 22 hours. It's bubbling away nicely. It's only maybe 20 degrees here in the garage, maybe 21. Certainly in the lower end of the 20s, but it's ticking along nicely, so I'm happy with that. And whatever it's going to take to ferment, it's going to take. See all the time they're worried about, keeping their ferments up in the in the sort of 30-degree mark to keep it active and keep it going. I've never worried about the temperature of my washers, of my mash, the spirits. I've never worried about it. I've just put them on. Whatever the temperature is in the garage at the time is what temperature they ferment at. And I've never had an issue. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer, but I've never had a problem. Now, whether that is a problem with flavour development, whether it has some sort of impact, I really don't know. And I don't have the time, inclination, patience, etc. to even try and find out where to even begin. Such an experiment would just blow my mind. So that's not going to happen. The product I'm getting is more than satisfactory, so I'm not worried about it. So it's ticking away. So what is the plan? What is the plan for this, sort of this hybrid, corn mash? And I sort of call it a hybrid because it's a mix between the Uncle Jesse's and a traditional mash. It's sort of a bit of both. It's not one, it's not the other, it's not as simple and all the rest of it. But anyway, under the rules of convention, this first batch obviously is not sour mash because there's nothing sour in there. So generation 1 will roll along as it does with any Uncle Jesse's. And as soon as you go back and look at the original, the first couple of whiskey jars, which was when I first started with UJSSM, takes you through that process of generation 1 and generation 2, and getting that second generation going and using the back set from generation 1, which then gets you into that point where you're actually doing a sour mash. I have tried using that sour remnants from the still and mashing grain into that and using that in the next batch, and that was and I totally missed this when I was doing the videos, when I was doing these mixing videos and the updates on the LJSM and the upgraded. Was I had 2 bottles of the LJSSM a month apart each, and I couldn't, when I was doing the videos, for the life of me, I couldn't work out why I had these 2 bottles a month apart. And I was thinking they were just 2 separate runs. But what it was the first batch was the normal sour mash, and the second was this one that I'd done on the sour mash, but I'd used all the chocolate rye. And I was looking to actually compare that to see what difference it made, and in the end I think I've managed to just mix, blend or cut back the 2 jars I had kept to a point where I can't actually compare them directly anymore. we're off track a little bit from exactly where I'm going. But that being said, for anyone who was interested and did watch that, I remember commenting how the richness and the depth of the flavour was in that second jar, and obviously that's why that was that chocolate rye and that extra sour mash. So that's something I certainly may venture back into further down the track as a separate thing, because I think that process and those ingredients was making a very interesting whiskey. I think there's something really nice to work with in that, but that's something down the track. Back with this fella. So I'm going to run this through that same process. I said three stripping runs, generation 1, 2 and 3, which will all be combined. So basically that first batch, which isn't soured, isn't going to really have a lot of impact. It'll get lost effectively in the mix. And so 3 stripping runs, and I'll do a spirit run on that. And I'll age that, and I'll cut and bottle it. I will then continue doing generations 4, 5 and 6. Now I know from the previous run of the Uncle Jesse's that batch 4, 5 and 6 were considerably deeper in flavour than generation 1, 2 and 3. And that's a common sort of understanding and thing you see all the time. People talk about how your generations develop and how it gets more flavour as it goes. And that was evident. So we'll run with that again. So obviously generation 4, 5 and 6 they'll all get stripped, and then they'll go through a spirit run themselves. At that point, whether I continue on or not will depend on how I'm going stock level wise. But I'm hoping at that point that will put enough stock up that I can then start playing around with these couple of little things. But right now I want to focus on doing a full walkthrough with this process, because I really think this is going to make a really decent quality whiskey, and it's fucking easy. Yeah, like I said, the hardest I got was weighing out the grain and milling it. And if you're buying it ready milled, you haven't even got to do that. You could, not even have to weigh. You could buy it bloody weighed up, ready to go, if you wanted to. But with a simple heat some water up, steep some grain, take it out, boil it, let it sit. Took me 3 hours from start to finish. From the time I actually decided I'm going to put this together to the time I pitched the yeast, it was like 3 hours and 10 minutes. So, and I was doing a mountain of other things in between. It probably took me 40 minutes all up, hands on, to knock it out over a 3 hour period. Easy, simple. The only equipment I've used is the fermenter I'm fermenting in, a 10 litre stock pot. Brew on a bag, that's it. And a spoon. Fucking stirring spoon, that's the extent of it. And knocked it out really nice. The wort, or the mash, the wash, whatever you want to call it, going in, tastes fucking sensational. So I'm really confident we're going to get something really good out of this. Knowing what I do from what I have played with leading up to this, I know I'm going to get decent product. There's no doubt about it. I'm not worried about that in the slightest. But to me, it's going to be a case of just how good it is comparative to how easy it is to make. So I'm hoping for thumbs up. I really don't think it's going to be an issue. I think it's going to be good. So that's where we're going. Now that's probably going to be realistically a 6-month process, getting from now to the end of that second batch. it's going to take me pretty well a month per, yeah, well, probably close to sort of 3 weeks, yeah, between each run, which will push you up to close to 6 months by the time you've done the strip runs, and then come back for a spirit run. So probably looking 6 months all up to get through. But before the end of that 6 months, we'll be looking at getting some tasting on the first batch of Gen 1, 2 and 3, because we will look at it, yeah, 2 months of oaking to start tasting. So pretty confident that within 6 months we'll be getting, we'll be bottling and drinking some of this. So that's where we're at. So if you got any comments, any questions, stick them down the bottom as always. As I said, Patreons, thank you very much, guys. Cheers. If you aren't subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you're watching, hit the like button. All these things help. But other than that, that's me. So till I see you again in the whiskey jar and we're playing around. Cheers.